Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. Today is not simply the launch of a book, it's the beginning of a structural cycle. Um, Fell, people, scale. Now, it's not a slogan, it's a cycle. In the decade we are entering, businesses that do not understand that cycle will not fail dramatically. They will fail quietly. So let that sit. Let me share the screen with you so that we can uh, sort of exchange also the facts around this. Okay. So as I was saying before, fail people scale is not a slogan. It's a cycle that we all encounter in our life, in our professional life as well as in our personal life. This is a cover of the book, and here is the synopsis in just one page, which is the cover page. It's gone out today. Effectively, from today, you can find it on Amazon. You can find it in different formats. You can find it in Kindle if you like. Later on this afternoon, it will also be available on Audible. You will also find it on paperback, and you will also find it on a hardcover. Okay. So today I'm going to also talk about the High Valuation Code. But let's now consider the moment we're living as we speak. What era are we living in? Why this matter? Why this book matter today? And why do we want to build businesses that customers want to buy from, the banks want to fund, and investors want to buy? Okay. Now let's come with a first very very strong fact. So this is a really structural moment. We're living through three irreversible shift. Okay. Now, the first one is that the 90% of the S&P 500 is intangible. And this is actually an evolution in our history, because if you go back to the 70s, the value of the S&P 500 was made only 17% by intangible. So effectively, what we have seen is we've seen an amazing change in our economies. We went from steel, from factories to intellectual property. And if you look at what happened in the last few decades, the businesses that dominated really the economies, they are the businesses dominated intangible. And no economies like the USA has actually mastered this so well. So the USA has become really the economy that's led the world. And the biggest success story of the last generation, they've all been American, if we think really thoroughly about that. We can think about Apple, we can think about Microsoft, we can think about, even the historical one, like Disney, Coca-Cola, they've all really developed better and better. Well, we haven't seen the same in other parts of the world. So what does what does it mean that the 90% of the S&P 500 value is intangible? It means that this is really, obviously, it's not going to be reversible. And AI is actually making this acceleration even bigger. What we have seen as well, private capital market is expanding much quicker than public markets. In the next 48 months, private capital will expand by an extra $10 trillion. Now, bear that in mind, it was $14 trillion. It is $14 trillion as of 2025, yeah? So from $14 trillion to $24 trillion in just 5 years. This has never happened in history. It's the first time it ever happened. And so this is what really create this book. Why this book is so important today, because most businesses, they are really fragile in front of investor. Artificial intelligence is accelerating productivity and exposure as well. It's effectively causing everyone to be more professionalized, because AI can only scale when there is documentation, when the business has prepared itself for it. We have seen some prediction from Gartner that 40% of AI project will fail. Now, that's quite an important revelation statement. What that means is that 40% of businesses are not prepared for AI. And guess what's going to happen to the other 60% who are prepared? They're obviously going to be dominating the market. Now, these three forces, the S&P 500 valuation, which is mainly intangible, the private capital market acceleration, and the AI acceleration as well, they really force change on how value is created. And that's why the high valuation triangle is the system I created is going to be more and more dominant. They change how fragility is exposed. Let's face it, especially AI. It makes some businesses much more fragile. Some businesses obviously much stronger, but some even more fragile. Now, in this environment, revenue is not protection. Okay, so you don't confuse activity with value added. Businesses that add valuation, they really, command a high valuation than other businesses. Growth is not resilience. Growth alone is not resilience. You need a structure. Optimism is not a strategy. And also, structure beats charisma. So you want a structure more than you want personality, because if businesses really depend on founders, on just a few ads, effectively, then it's not sustainable. It's not something that banks want to fund. It's not something that investors want to buy. So discipline really beats ambition. So this is a clear statement. Yeah. Especially now that AI is becoming so much more powerful. Governance, many people think governance is something that we will think about that later, is administration. Governance beats improvisation. And this is happening so much we've seen actually in the last few days, some very important statement. Jack Dorsey, there was a company with 10,000 employees, which more than 4,000 were made redundant because of artificial intelligence. So this is where we see the markets reacting, really, rewarding those businesses with high valuation as well. So governance beat improvisation. That's why failed pivot scale exists. Yeah. Now let's understand what this apply. How does it apply? How this apply to you? It applies to founders. It applies to consultants, a small business owner, and finance professional. Because the high valuation triangle is a system designed on three main pillars. The pillars that we're going to look at in a few moments, they are effectively what creates a really such a distinguishment between those businesses that really are funded by investor. Investor want to buy, and those businesses that investor don't fund effectively. So I've seen profitable businesses collapse, not because customer disappeared. Actually the other way around. The customer were flocking into the business, not because the product was weak, but because the structure was fragile, founder dependency too high. So you got a single point of failure, which really causes issues. The funding gaps unmanaged. I saw, for example, in the last 2 months, one business with $3 trillion failing because they couldn't manage the funding gap. Something that many finance professionals would find it so easy to manage. Another business growing 40 times in 1 year, creating a $60 million gap in the balance sheet. They could not actually continue. They actually went to Chapter 11. Governance too thin, no defensible intellectual property, no succession depth. Most failures are really, really slow. Structural decay compounds quietly. And by the time fragility becomes visible, optionality has vanished. Now, let these two words really be top of mind when we talk about valuation. They are one the opposite of the other one. One is dependency, the other one is optionality. Optionality is what gives you valuation. It what gives you really a business that investor will buy and banks will fund and customer will buy from. Dependency is the opposite. Dependency is where the business will unfortunately be not fundable. Banks will not fund. Investor will discount it. Will make sure that the valuation is lower and lower they apply very big risk factor, or sometimes they don't even look at it. So dependency are really what we are trying to avoid here. So this is the failed phase, effectively. Failed doesn't mean bankruptcy. Failed means structural misalignment. Let's look at that in more detail. So we said the revenue is no protection. So I just wrote these three statements here. Revenue is not resilience. Yeah. Now, the quality of revenue is not something you look in a financial statement. Yeah. Because an investor will probably read your financial statement, but they will go beyond that. They want to find out about the contracts, whether the customer is is receiving value. Don't forget about this, which is very important. I've seen businesses delivering a diamond like furniture. So if you know what economic benefits you're delivering for your customer, you should not really sell it for price. You should sell it for value. A customer you sell on for price on will leave you on price, while a customer you sell on value on will stay on value. Now, growth is not necessarily stability. And I always say this: growth without structure is actually velocity towards risk, and especially with in AI-driven economies, we need more and more structure, because let's face it, if you grow and you don't know, for example, your cash flow statement in the next, or your cash flow forecast for the next few weeks or months, then you're bound to fail. And this is unfortunately what I see happening all the time. Now, the other thing to say is that growth without governance, in particular, growth without really the right leadership depth, will be punished by investor and by banks. And even customer, they will only buy. They will only want to buy from you when they see stability. So it's not just about when you need somebody to fund your business. Valuation is not something that you create on a spreadsheet by doing a calculation, by multiplying EBITDA or profits with a multiple you decide. It's something that you build every day without any interruption, effectively. So by the time you need to calculate your valuation, that it will be the results of many, many years of your efforts, effectively. So that's fundamental. Profit is not safety. Why is that? And we've seen this so many times. It's because profit is an accounting result. That is like an opinion. It doesn't tell you the future. If you want safety, you need to ensure that you embrace, liquidity, cash flow management. That's what you need. Revenue is no protection. Now, most failures are really slow. They're not really fast, which makes them even more painful. And usually they come from founder dependency, when everything depends on a founder. And especially now that your competitors can actually use AI in the way that was not possible a few years ago. If everything is in your head, if nothing is documented, AI has got nothing to scale. I always say this: ChatGPT is productivity theater. It will not increase your valuation. What will increase your valuation is the implementation of AI agent, for example. So AI agent, yes, but before you actually implement a scaling process with the AI agent, you need to be organized. You need to have documented process. Now, weak governance is where we see, for example, execution gaps. Execution gaps, they are unfortunately where great strategy, I always say, they become great tragedies. Why is that? Well, a great strategy usually stays on paper and it gets rewritten. By what? By emotion. So usually you have three types of emotion that, because of weak governance, will impair your business. One type of emotion is attachment. The other type is fear, and the other type is avoidance. Usually got one of these three that will make an execution not viable eventually. Surprise, surprise. Unfortunately, as I was saying before, great strategies are everywhere. but great execution is rare. And that's something that we need to think about. Yeah. Now, no defensibility. Now, don't forget this. When you approach a bank, an investor, and you want to talk about the upside of your business, the bank will look the other way. They will actually measure the downside. They will want to understand, what happens if something breaks. Why do they want to know more about what happens when something breaks? It's not because they are pessimistic, because in real life we know, and that comes from the example of every business in the world that's been successful. Something will break, and you will have to show how resilient you are, how consistent you are with your business, and that's really where you want to show defensibility. Speak the investor's language in front of investor. Speak the bank language in front of banks, really, because that's going to pay off. You're going to get funded like an asset. Yeah. Now, funding gaps, I've seen this so many already in 2026, and they were so big. Businesses were profitable, but they were not managing the customer. They were not managing the supplier, and they ended up failing. One business was actually valued $200 million on the stock market. Another one reached a $1.4 billion annualized revenue when they only had 30 million the year before. Guess what? They had no financial intelligence, and that's something also for finance professional or listening today. Finance professional, you need to stand up. It's not just a job title. Sometimes, you really have to go beyond your job description, because your job description only tells you what a founder may want you to do, but you know very well that financial intelligence, the lack of financial intelligence, even worse, the unused existing financial intelligence will cause failure in the business. So you have to take action, sometimes against your job description. You have to explain why. Then no exit clarity as well. Now, many people say, "Oh, I don't really need to know about exit because I don't plan to exit." Well, guess what? If you got an exit plan, you're already ahead of your competition, because you got the best possible structure in the business. Uh, but just in case if somebody come and they want to buy your business, you're ready for starter. But you are running your business with the right structure. You have the right, talent in the business. You have the right process. You are AI ready if you got an exit plan, because you will have governance in place that will allow you to implement AI, will allow you to scale with AI. So exit clarity is unfortunately where we see so many failures. Yeah. So as we can see, failures usually are not fast; they're slow. And let's face it, one of the reasons why in 2017 I wrote this program for the University of Plymouth was because I was so disheartened by seeing all these failures. And when a business fails, we all lose. It's not just the entrepreneur who fails, because the jobs will go, and people who were working for that business will go, and also the product we were used to buy, they will go as well. It's a loss for everyone. So this is why this program is not just, this book is not just for entrepreneurs who are failing. It's really for all of us. We all need to learn how to treat failure effectively. So the cycle is fail, pivot, scale. If we look at the biggest successful story in our history, we will see, for example, even Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, all of them, they go through this cycle. It's a cycle, it's not a slogan. So you scale after you pivot, and you pivot after you fail. And just reverse and engineering the logic, that's really what happens, really. And we've seen it so many times. We've seen, for example, with Steve Jobs, there was obviously failure before pivoting and scaling. But don't let that fool. It's not just a playbook here, because every situation is unique. Let's take Steve Jobs, for example. What did he do after he pivoted Apple in 2001 into digital music, with the iPod? Well, he actually killed the iPod because he wanted to scale with something different, which was the iPhone. Now, let's think about an example which you will find in the book as well. You'll find so many examples on the book about this. Kodak did the opposite. Kodak invented digital photography in 1975, around that date, really. Forgive me if that's not the exact date. Now, Kodak, they invented digital photography, but what they did not pivot because they were making so much money on films, in the same way as Apple was doing with the iPod. Yeah. So, so Kodak was making so much money on films that they forgot about digital photography. And what happens after 20, 30 years? The competition took over and Kodak was gone. So each situation is unique. So don't think that, you just have to read and apply something. And by the way, the book will give you is 26 chapter with 6 bonus chapter. Each chapter will give you a scorecard that you can complete. You can complete it in 2026. You can complete it in 2030. Whenever you need to complete it, you can go back to it every quarter. That particular scorecard will allow you to, which there are 26 of them as well in the book. So there's so many of them. You'll be able to measure how your business is going to really score against those scorecard, and you'll be able to say, okay, this is what I need to improve this month. This is what I need to improve this quarter. And it works really well also for solopreneurs and for finance professional and consultant as well. Again, it's part of what I did since 2017. Okay, so let's now go into, again, a few words about fail. We got structural misalignment. Ambition is not architecture, okay? Now, ambition is what you really want to achieve, but architecture is about executing it. Okay, it's fundamental. So fail is when you see this this real this real misalignment. Yeah, as I said before, there are great strategies everywhere. Go to ChatGPT, go to Google, buy any book. Great strategies on paper, they all look great, but then execution is a totally different matter, as I said before. Okay, let's talk about pivot. We spend a lot of time on fail. By the way, if you want to send me some comments, please feel free. I will interrupt, anytime you want to ask me a question. Now, pivot is not reinvention, okay? Pivot is effectively correction. And that's how Jeff Bezos, that's how Steve Jobs, all the most successful people in the world have done. It's the decision to move from improvisation to architecture in many situations. Now, pivot is where you need to do it decisively. You don't just pivot, you just think about it and then you never do it. When you understand that something has failed is where you need to really pivot. And from operator to designer. So perhaps you were acting as an operator before. You were not thinking like a designer. You were thinking, I don't care about my valuation because I don't need to exit my business. Then it comes a moment, you speak to a bank, you speak to an investor, suddenly you need a valuation and you have not designed it. Yeah. This is not something you improvise. You need to design your valuation. It's something that, happens. It's the result of so many thousands of steps, so many trade-off decisions you have to make every day in your business, but keeping in mind the design. That's why the high valuation triangle exists. It gives you the grid. It gives you the design that you need to follow so that you can achieve the best possible outcome, which is, again, you want the free people that puts money in your bank account to be able to deal with you, to be happy to deal with you. Who are these free people? The customer, they buy your services, buy your goods. They buy value from you. They don't buy a transaction. The banks, they will fund you. The investor, they will buy you, or even they will buy a portion of your business. So valuation is engineered. It is not awarded. It's not something that comes out of a spreadsheet in just 5 minutes because you ask somebody to calculate how much is your business worth. Yeah. because investors do not buy stories. They buy systems. They buy defensibility. A usual conversation here with a bank is you go to a bank, you go and speak to them, and you start telling a story, and you start showing a linear growth. Yeah. You start saying, okay, my sales will start growing 20% per annum for the next, 2 years, 5 years, whichever time that is. Now, the minute you start talking like that, the bank will understand immediately that you have effectively created a financial forecast, reversing engineering according to your own desire, your own ambition, but not according to reality. The bank and the investor as well, they will instead do something else. They will start to measuring the downside risk, and they will apply a risk factor higher than the normal. That's why I'll tell you this, which is very important. Investors and bank, they always only back financial intelligence. So investors, they buy defensibility, they buy leadership depth. Okay, so they want to see that there is not a single point of failure in the founder. There is a leadership depth. There are people who are selling. There are people who are producing. There are people who are generating cash flow. That's where the high valuation triangle becomes critical. The high valuation triangle is made of three pillars. These three pillars I introduced in 2017 with the University of Plymouth with a program I wrote throughout that summer. It was a very hot summer. It was a pilot. I had so many students who were so many entrepreneurs who came to me for that. And I created this high valuation triangle based on three pillars. Pillars number one, intellectual property monetization. Pillar number two, succession depth. Pillar number three, global optionality. Now, without those three pillars, scale becomes fragile. Each one of these pillars in the book Felt People Scale occupy at least 3 chapters. So 9 chapters are dedicated to these 3 pillars, and you'll be able to measure yourself against those, and you'll be able to apply your scorecard, your score when you buy the book, when you see how you score against those. And the good thing about these 3 pillars is that they're not just they don't just add to each other, they compound with each other. So what I mean by this, good intellectual property monetization will compound into succession depth. Succession depth will compound into global optionality. So these 3 pillars are designed for 5 stages. In each one of these 5 stages, you will find they behave differently. I'll tell you about these 5 stages because I moved to scale. The 5 stages are startup. Number 1 is startup. And usually it's pre-revenue. Number 2 is scale up. Scale up is when you have rising revenue, when the market has already accepted your product and is now ready to see you through the next phase of expansion, which usually is the most painful because founders, they find it the most difficult way to actually navigate in this particular phase. Number 3 is stagnation. In stagnation, the high valuation triangle will change shape. You will see this on the book. The first 10 chapters are dedicated to how these 5 phases move together with the high valuation triangle. Because in stagnation, you're not in startup. It's not the same thing. You need to really go and really reinforce what intellectual property you own and what succession you're building or you built or needs to be changed, and whether global markets, they provide an opportunities to get out of stagnation. Phase number 4 is crisis. Crisis is when you go falling revenues and possibly, usually falling cash flow for sure. Sometimes you can have rising sales and falling cash flow in a crisis, which is, unfortunately, I've seen this year already twice in 2 big businesses. Now, with this 3 pillar scaling becomes fragile. Yeah. So, and let's come to scale now. Now, what usually is a good scaling phase. A good scaling phase is when you have controlled expansion. Obviously, I could write, the book goes on and on about, you will find so much more than four bullet points, really. So you find so much more. So I try to summarize here today. So controlled expansion, what it means that the business becomes mature. Now, maturity is not equal to a founder controlling everything. It's the total opposite. Control expansion comes when the business starts to build optionality. Optionality is the most important word when it comes to investor, when it comes to banks, when it comes to customer. Okay, so control expansion is where you really start with cash discipline, governance maturity, leadership depth, and governance maturity. We've seen all these four bullet points here. Now, capital readiness comes when you have all these four. Okay, so cash discipline is when you know the future, where you can actually design the future, because that's where financial intelligence really is needed. It's not needed to tell you what happened in the past. It is needed to tell you what's going to happen in the future with cash discipline. And trust me, there are so many businesses, they fail because they just don't have that discipline. So many founders are intimidated by finance. They think finance will control what they do. They think that finance will take over freedom. They will give you lots of pessimism about what you do. They'll tell you no to everything you want to do. It couldn't be further from the truth, because what really makes good financial intelligence is risk asymmetry. What is risk asymmetry? Risk asymmetry is about looking at the downside and the upside in the same manner. You obviously want to manage a potential downside risk, but you want to maximize your upside risk. And too many founders think that finance is just about the downside. It just could not be further from the truth. Yeah. So what I always say is cash flow is oxygen. And trust me on this, the growth will burn oxygen. Many people think, okay, we are growing, so that's great. Not really, because growth usually burn oxygen. And scaling chaos multiplies collapse. So when we talk about AI readiness, for example, AI will just amplify whatever you have. If you have growth without structure, then it will probably accelerate the destruction of your business. If you go growth with structure, AI will accelerate your growth, your expansion with the cash flow generation. And this is where we see really, I mean, I always say you go from bad to worse or from good to great. Yeah. This is where I see AI really changing business. And growth is really that kind of situation, that kind of amplifier where you can really make it to break it. And that's where those who are disciplined, those who who are controlling their expansion, they will be, the best performer in future. They will conquer this economy. So this is the question the book really forces you to confront. Yeah. So as I was saying before, valuation is engineered. So who are the people who put money in your bank account? Where you see your bank statement, where is the money coming from? Well, it's coming usually from customer. It's coming from banks because they fund your business, and it's coming from investor because the investor will want to put money to your business. So investors buy systems. They don't buy just a founder-centric business at all. Clients, they buy clarity. Clients, they want to really have value. When they pay you $10 for your product, it's because the value they receive is more than $10. It's probably $20. Yeah. They want to see value. They don't want to just buy because you have the best price, because, if they buy from you on price, they will leave you on price. That's the only reason why they buy from you. If they buy from you on value, if they got clarity about value, they will stay on value. And that's where I saw so many failure, where effectively the business founder was a genius, but he didn't know what value it was giving to a customer. And sometimes we see the opposite. We see value donation. So you see a huge benefit given to a customer, like for example, millions of value, where you price it for 10,000 because it costs you 1,000 to build it. This is why you really have to master intellectual property monetization, because the economic benefit you are creating for your customer is fundamental to monetize, to first, identify, then codify, then protect, then monetize in intellectual property. And then that doesn't come really just on a spreadsheet. You want to make sure that the client, when they buy from you, they become like your partners. They want to come to you because they want to see that they gain so much value from your product and services. They want to stick with you. Okay. The markets reward defensibility. You always have to look about defense. You can't just you cannot just think about your upside. You need to measure your downside as well. In the same way as a bank will measure the downside when they meet with you. When you meet with your bank manager, that's exactly what's happening. That's exactly how you want to really think yourself as well. Okay. So so this is really what valuation is engineered. When somebody comes to me and tell me, well, I don't need a valuation because I'm not selling my business, or I don't need to work on my valuation because I don't have any offer for my business, but in a couple of years' time, I'll want to exit. That's the biggest mistake you can make, because valuation is engineered. It's a design. You need to design into your business. If you design it early into your business, then you will be able to to enjoy what comes with it. Which is investors, bank, customer really coming to you, because one thing that the investor and the bank they will always want to see from you in a business is the transferability, is transferable value. Okay, so this is where we see the valuation is engineered. Yeah. Now, the question really, the book really forces to confront is really this one. It's how are you going to operate, either as a solopreneur, as a consultant, as a business founder, as a small business, or even as a big business. Are you gonna really navigate around those three biggest economic shit we've seen for decades? Yeah. And so this is where the book is definitely going to help you with those. It's going to be 26 chapter plus 6 bonus chapter. I say 32 because 26 are divided into two parts. The first 10 are about the 5 stages, which I mentioned before: startup, scale up, crisis, stagnation, exit. The other 13 chapter, there will be about the high valuation triangle. And now you design the exit really, because eventually, you also want to think about the exit. Sometimes people that tell me, okay, well, I'm not going to exit my business. I'm a startup. I don't care about that phase. Or somebody might say, okay, well, I don't think I will get there. Well, guess what? If you do not really protect your intellectual property and monetize intellectual property, when you start up, you're going to pay the price when you scale up. And when you scale up, if you don't really create leadership depth, you're going to pay the price when you exit, because you're going to exit for no money. Sometimes the business will be worthless, even when they make £5 million profit, £10 million profit, £20 million profit. You got no transferability, no transferable value. You're just not going to be able to sell anything. Yeah. So you don't just think like, I'm in that cycle. I'm a scale up. I don't need to look back at what was useful to be done on a startup phase. Or I'm a scale up. I don't need to think about exit. That couldn't be farther from the truth. You need to really design your business for the future, and design is not something you do in just one month or one quarter. Okay. Now, the book is what is going to give you also all this. I would say all this insightful, insightful, um, uh, really structure that you'll be able to follow. It comes from the 2017 work at Stanford University, but some of you will want to go from book to execution. Yeah, so you can read obviously Fell, People, Scale. Uh, and it will change how you think, because I mean, I've seen it already happening since 2017 when people came into my program. There were so many entrepreneurs. They never thought they were going to do a joint venture with anyone in their lifetime. Well, guess what? Joint ventures are how I manage my business, how I actually execute in general, the biggest possible success of my life. Just think about small businesses who can actually approach a big business. Go back to the COVID era where Pfizer and BioNTech, they managed together to create the COVID vaccine. Why is that? Because they did a partnership, and a business can do a partnership with another business. In actual fact, it can be so much more successful than with big businesses. We've seen with big businesses. We've seen Glaxo and Google, for example. We've seen Microsoft and Intel. Microsoft does not make microchips. Intel does not sell to consumer. Well, together they created what we call Wintel, which dominated the hardware market. So you can read, as I said, the book. It will change how you think, definitely. But thinking is not implementation. So, which is why here on Substack only, I created the High Valuation Code. The High Valuation Code is it comes from the High Valuation Triangle, and is where you're gonna have obviously so much more of the benefit than a normal subscriber. The book is what we call the blueprint, although I would be very careful with the word blueprint sometimes because too many people use it, and it's not just theory, of course, yeah. But the code is the execution. So this is not a newsletter as such, So you obviously will be able to read my newsletter, which is going to be 3 times a week. But you're going to have so much more. You're going to have toolkits. You're going to have also 12 the 12 outcomes that I'm going to share with you in the next newsletter. 12 outcomes of which you can choose which one is relevant to you. You don't have to take them all. Now, I'm going to do a cohort on that from the 8th of April. The cohort will be about all those 12 outcomes. About obviously those who are coming to the newsletter, they will not need to apply all the 12 outcomes because, some of those will not apply to them. They're going to work a bit like mini courses. So it's not going to be passive education. It's a structural execution environment. The High Valuation Triangle, as I was saying before, is about these 3 pillars. Yeah. Making memorable, very easy. Back in 2017, I thought, well, there are thousands of things that you need to do to really make a high valuation business. Instead, I said, well, this is memorable. So you need to only remember 3 things: intellectual property, succession death, global optionality. And obviously you will find so much more about those in the book ahead. So let me tell you this, for solopreneur and consultant, really, your structured pricing needs to really create recurrent revenue, IP creation, and reduce dependency. Now, believe it or not, for solopreneur and consultants, the best business model could be Disney. Now, Disney, how many times do they repurpose what they do? They create movies, and then out of movies, they create merchandising, they create books, they create so many ways to actually control their intellectual property and monetize it. There was a consultant I worked with last year, and he was making £40,000. It's in the UK, £40,000 of profits, and he asked me to come with a valuation, and now he could increase the valuation. Initially, it was assigned a valuation of £100,000, which is 2.5 times EBITDA. That's £40,000 multiplied by 2.5. Yeah. Now he told me, what can I do to actually increase the valuation of my business. How can I get more money from my bank? And we went through all he did. And what we found is that he really owns so much intellectual property. It was already there. It just needed to be codified. It needed to be documented. It needed to be protected, and then you need to monetize it. Yeah. So when you're a consultant and you apply your method to customers and you repeat them over, now you know your own methods. You know that you're able to generate recurring revenues, royalties. You can create toolkits. You can create various parts of tools for your customer that they can use, and they can have an outcome out of that. You can transform your customer. Yeah. So reduce dependency is fundamental, because you don't want to have just one revenue stream. Okay. Many people here on Substack, they talk about you have to sell many stream to many people, to many people, more than one stream to many people. That's absolutely true. I agree with that entirely. For small businesses, cash discipline. So you need delegation system. Yeah, you want really one of the pillar of the High Valuation Triangle to be absolutely strong. And we're talking about leadership there. You want to have governance tension. By the way, you don't want to have groupthink in your business. Groupthink is what kills businesses. And I'll tell you this, I've been 11 years ago, I completed my Financial Times non-executive director diploma. And it was studied that most business failures are because of groupthink. Okay. So groupthink is really where you see the failure, because everyone agrees with someone else, and then eventually it's a damage for everyone because nothing gets decided. Governance tension, really, you need that absolutely. You need defensible positioning. Look for the upside, but have always risk asymmetry in mind when you manage a business. Don't just think about, okay, that's the upside, that's what I'm going to go for. Just think about the downside. Because if you do that, not only you're going to be able to, for example, have a good insurance program, yeah? Make sure you got an insurance program. Make sure you know how to calculate and manage your risk with that. Because if you do that, you will be rewarded by banks, by investors, and eventually by customers as well. Yeah. For finance professionals, it's about architectural thinking. Stop thinking about your job only. Your job. Think about this. This is the future. Capital readiness, AI governance, board level discipline. So finance professionals, in my view, they need to change. I'm a finance professional myself. I'm a chartered accountant since 2002. I studied in two countries. I was first educated in Italy, then I completed in the UK. My education, but I always work in the UK. So this is where we need to really adapt ourselves with the time. Don't just think about what is written on paper, what is expected of you, just because somebody told you, okay, that's your job description, that's what I want every day, every week, every month. Keep abreast of external markets. Keep abreast of interest rates market. Because the question you need to answer in future is, what if the margins are declining 20%? What if they go from 50 to 20%? What if I got tariffs from the Trump government that are unexpected, which there will be, which it happened a lot last year, and I wrote an article about this. So what happens if, for example, a big customer leaves us? What happens if competitors, they advance on AI while we're not, because we're not ready for that? What happens if our intellectual property monetization does not happen the way it should be? What happens if there are leakages from somewhere in the business? What happens if the funding gap? What happens if we grow 50%? Because that would feel like good news to everyone. Well, it's not good news, because I saw businesses failing, growing 3,000%. So make sure, this is really for finance professional. Make sure that you got this architectural thinking. Okay. So as I was saying before, blueprint to execution. Blueprint, I use this word because obviously it comes easy. So probably I should hate myself because I don't like this word anymore. Anyway, let's call it the blueprint, because blueprint is what many people like to associate with something that they will refer back to. And trust me, you will refer back to this book many, many times, because the scorecards will tell you the story today, but will also tell you the story tomorrow. So you're going to go back to the book many times in your lifetime. And hopefully that will help you a lot. The high valuation code is the application. Now, this is what I'm going to offer for the Substack members. So it's just the real, so the typical, and I'm not going to do any more than what many people do. If I think that was already set them up for this particular price per year, you're going to have digital book included. You're going to have access to the code Bolt. You can choose 3 outcomes out of 12. Okay. There are 12 outcomes which are going to be introduced with the high valuation code. They all revolve around fundability. They all revolve around defensibility. They all revolve around what really will make your business investable, fundable, and effectively loved by your customer. And it will also be private session once a month. So once a month, we'll have a webinar together where I will show you all, take question, because each business is unique. The book will tell you, obviously, what you're going to be learning, effectively, the transformation you will get from the book, the transformation, the way you think. But each business is unique. Each business will want to be, we want to ask a different question than another business. Yeah. So, and again, that's where the ramification comes. Obviously, from my experience as a chartered accountant, as a board director, finance professional for the last 30 years, I will seek to answer as many questions as possible. I will anticipate there will also be some special AI-driven conversation with some AI expert who are actually working on AI governance. And currently, one of my activities is that I'm working with a serial entrepreneur who's at 7 exit already. He has selected me to work on an AI agent which will eliminate 95% of human tasks which are allocated to cash collection. So basically, businesses that will need that tool, we're actually working on that right now. And the minimum viable products will be available in June, or probably earlier than that, May, but let's be pessimistic, let's say June. Then the final product will be in around August. So we're already talking to a number of customers. And by the way, we're in partnership with Xero. So Xero is actually endorsing us for this. So that's great. So yeah, that's a side item about what I do at the moment. So as I said, with this founding membership, you will be able to choose 3 outcomes private session. Now, if you want more than this, obviously, we will have to talk about something more, which will be a cohort, which is going to start on the 8th of April. If you follow me on Substack, you will find all details about this. I will be publishing a newsletter about the cohort as well soon next week, okay? Now, it's limited to 150 members. First 50 priority access, the price is locked permanently. I know that so many people, they would say that this is low, but the value is obviously much higher than this. But what I'm looking to do here in Substack is really to to create that useful tier for everyone, where everyone feels included. So it's just a small enough effort so that we can actually start to have conversation with as many people as possible. Although eventually, each situation will be different. So this is my final statement, really. Why fail people scale, and what should you do about this cycle? Because they're going to happen to your life. They are already happening, maybe already. So fail early. I wouldn't say fail fast. Don't get me wrong. I mean, fail fast, I don't think is probably the right way to say this. But fail early and smart, I would say. Then I would say pivot decisively and deliberately. Okay. Now, skill with architecture. Join the High Valuation Code if you like to have more implementation after the book. Now, fail pivot scale. It is not a slogan; it's a cycle. As I said before, fail early means identify structural weaknesses. Pivot deliberately, correct with discipline, scale architecturally, expand with resilience. If you want the blueprint, order the book. If you want to apply it in real time, also join the High Valuation Code as a founding member. Question is, are you investable? And basically what we're going to say here is we can now open the room for any question you might have. I'll be very happy to take any question you might have on this. Obviously, yeah, the book is the main reason for this, but I wanted to also give you an opportunity to think about join a live discussion with on Substack as well. Okay. In any case, what you can do, you know how to reach me out on Substack. I'm also, but most of my network is on LinkedIn as well. I go just about 39,800 followers on LinkedIn, where I've been on LinkedIn for many, many years, I must admit, since 2010. So you'll be able to find my content, shorter form content than on Substack on LinkedIn as well. While on Substack, obviously, I write my newsletter. I got 22,000 people who are subscribed to the Exponential Blueprint. Exponential Blueprint also has a YouTube channel. Which has about 42,000 subscriber. So you can also watch me there. The other place where you can find me is I've actually started an Amazon TV channel, which at the moment is continuous. So there's a stream on YouTube as well. So if you want to watch my Amazon TV channel, is on live streaming on YouTube as well. When you go to my YouTube channel, and obviously there are lots of podcasts. There is lots of documentation there, which is cross-reference to my newsletter. If you want to really find me every day, I post every day on LinkedIn. Usually that happens between 3 p.m. UK time. Every Wednesday, I have a LinkedIn live on the High Valuation Code, so you can watch me there as well if you like. All right. Okay, so obviously, yeah, we are on Substack. We obviously we talk about Substack more than anything else, really. So look, it was such a pleasure to have you today. I don't see any further question coming through at the moment. However, as you know, we can, we can. I think I need to stop sharing. This is my first time I do a Substack live, so I've never done one before. So now I can see that it's only me on the screen. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed the content of this live on Substack. I hope actually to be speaking to most of you, maybe having conversation. We can do one-to-one conversation with each one of you. I'll be happy to do that, and I'll always take invitation on. I've done quite a few podcasts as a guest in the last few months. Been quite busy. I suppose it's going to happen a lot more with the book launch. So look, thank you so much for your attention today. I'm very grateful for your attention, and I hope I'll see you soon somewhere on Substack, on LinkedIn, or whatever. Thank you very much for everything today. Bye.